every single day.
People want to connect with someone who...
Self-expression is life.
It is the challenge. It's a challenge of life.
You can't get mad at other people for not seeing your vision.
It was all about a grind. Like I said, I was selling CDs, DVDs, and clothes out the trunk of my
Whatever
car.
it takes.
This is for the people. Don't forget that. What's up, Lug Life family? Zach here, episode 25. I'm here with Harleen Kaur, my good friend, entrepreneur, fashion designer. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind just starting off, how did you get into the fashion industry?
Yeah, so I actually have been into fashion since I was little. The first time I can actually remember is with Barbies. My dad got me some software that you could literally design outfits on the software on the computer and print them out on like fabric paper. Wow. And then put them together and style your Barbies. So that was kind of like my first memory of fashion design. And then since then I was always into like art, just like anything kind of creative. I was really fortunate. My parents always pushed me in the direction that they felt like I was, I wanted to go in. So they enrolled me in extra art classes outside of school. They helped me enroll in like a fashion design program in high school. Cool. That was not in our high school. It was like at a different high school in the same county. My mom drove me to it every morning.
Shout out to your mom.
I know. So I was fortunate enough that they kind of, fed that creativity in me. But I was always interested in like so many different things. I was kind of like all over the place. So I really liked medicine. I really liked science also. So when I started applying for schools, I thought, I'm just going to get into, I think I want to do medicine. Applied for medicine, ended up going to UConn.
Yeah, shout out to UConn.
And I was actually started as a chemistry major.
Wow. And
I love chemistry. But after that first year, I was like, there's something missing. Yeah. I really need to get back into something artistic. So I did an internship in the city. And it was for a fashion designer named Laura Dahl. I don't think she's around anymore, but that kind of solidified my goals and I need to do something with art. So when I went back to school, I applied for the art program. I did 2 degrees actually, one in nutritional science and then one in art. And then the art that I focused in was a custom major. It was costume design and art illustration. So even within I knew I kind of wanted to do fashion, but I was still a little bit I want to keep my options open. I want to see what else is out there in terms of art. Then when I graduated, I started working for Nine West and then moved to J. Godfrey from there. And then I decided to start my own brand.
And how has that been since you decided to go into doing your own brand?
It was... I don't think I knew how much
of course.
how much time and energy it was literally going to suck out of me to run my own business. I definitely thought it was going to be it's just going to be a couple tough years and then I'll establish myself and I can just kind of let everything take care of itself. I can sit back and just design every day. I don't have to do anything else. And that is so far from the truth. I feel like it was a lot harder than what I thought it would be, but definitely very fulfilling. To be to have complete creative freedom is just such a blessing. You really don't have to be confined by anybody else's vision or anybody else's, ideas. You're really just using what you have and inside of you and putting it onto paper, then putting it into a garment and then, delivering it to people. It's such a cool thing, I think, for me, especially because I've always wanted to do it since I was young. In terms of running the business side of things, It's always a challenge. There's something new that pops up that I have to figure out every day. Luckily, my husband also runs his own business. So
shout out to your husband.
I'm fortunate enough that I can bounce ideas off of him sometimes. And his business is very different. His business is construction, but it is definitely still a business. You still have to deal with employees. You still have to deal with vendors. You still have to deal with customers. Customer service is such a huge part of our business that I like never really was trained in. That you really just have to like learn along the way. Really high highs, really low lows. Definitely an adjustment, but like I said, fulfilling nonetheless.
And I think one of the most amazing part of your brand is how you leaned into your culture. It doesn't seem like anyone is just specifically focusing on the Indian culture, right? And that has been really where your success has been. Yeah. So I think it was 2016. I went to India for my brother's wedding shopping. We were specifically looking for him at first, obviously, for all of his wedding events. You know, it's like a 5-day. That's crazy. You had to go all the way to India to get the wedding outfits. Yeah, and I mean, you know, the flights aren't cheap. It's like you're spending a couple $1,000, and the four of us went. Like, you know, me, my brother, and both of my parents. So it was definitely not a cheap trip, of course. But, like, you know, that's the place where you go to find all that stuff, you know? Especially back then, you know, there aren't very many options in the U.S. and in New York and the surrounding areas like New Jersey. You definitely have some options, but it's just not like you don't have that many things, to choose from. So we went to India. Every single store we went into, it's like, you know, a little 10-foot by 10-foot space of like menswear, and it's the same stuff in every single shop. Like you walk into one, you see a couple things, you walk into the next one, same exact things. And it's like the menswear was so limited. And then on top of that, the women's wear I couldn't find anywhere. Like I wanted florals. I wanted something like not too heavy, not too like traditionally Indian, not too much embroidery or beading. Like I wanted something cool and new, you know. I wanted something unique, something that was a little bit more my style, and I couldn't find any of it. So that's kind of when I knew, like, you know, I think like this is a good business plan. Like nobody's really doing it in the way that I want it to be done, and nobody's doing it within the US especially. There might be some people in India who like I wasn't aware of, but like, you know, in the US for sure there was nobody kind of tackling that issue, and I knew friends of mine who would like love these options. So you know, that's when I knew that I wanted to start the business. And then, you know, I don't even know what the question was. No, where did I go? No, that you hit it on the mark. Like there was no one doing what. Yes, that's what I wanted you to really talk about. Is you saw this opportunity. You know, when I look at social media and you see some of the Indian celebrities, you can tell they're wearing handmade custom outfits, and I feel like you do a really great job of presenting this high value, I don't know the right way to say it, but outfits for men and women that is available to the general public. Yeah. And like something that was really important to me. So, you know, after I had that idea, like I want to start this business, then it was like, okay, let me kind of like hone in on the things that I think are the most important. Number one was versatility. You know, a lot of the Indian stuff I had in my closet, you wear it once or twice and then that's it. It's done. You don't have the option to like pair one top with one skirt because it looks very bad together because they were like made to be together. So, I mean, you could do it, it's just not very common, you know? So I wanted things that would be easily paired with other items like from our collection. I also wanted to be able to perhaps wear one of my crop tops with like a pair of high-waisted jeans and go out with my friends, you know, because it's kind of sad when you buy these beautiful garments and then they sit to the end of your closet and then you can only wear them like a few times, right? So versatility was a huge thing. Quality was also a huge factor for me. So all of everything is being made in New York City, correct? Yeah, all of our production is done here in New York. Yeah, and it was definitely a difficult process to find. There's a reason, right? That no one does it in New York. It's expensive and it's difficult, you know, like to find the right people in New York. However, having that complete oversight of being able to like walk down the street, literally 2 blocks to our factory, and say like, oh, this actually came out a little bit
off. Can you redo it? Or, I don't like the way that this is turning out. Let's pause on this and let's like rework it,
I love it.
Those types of things are really important, not to mention just the quality of the garments. Like, there's everything is clean finished on the inside, and a lot of the stuff from India is meant to be like taken apart and put back together multiple times, which, serves its purpose in a different way. But for me, I wanted like the garments to have a long life. I wanted them to be able to be like, easily cleaned. I wanted them to be easily worn and not damaged. Those were like really important parts, for me. And then the last thing was like ethical production. So there were a lot of stories from overseas of like,
Right.
building collapses and these workers being locked in, and it was so sad and depressing to like see all of that happening. Nowadays there are factories overseas that are like completely compliant. They are doing things right. However, it's hard to like, the life of producing overseas requires me traveling there multiple times a year, making sure everything's compliant, or hiring people overseas, talking to them at midnight, 3:00 in the morning. Like, that's just not the life I wanted. I would rather produce here, know everything that's being done under like my nose 24/7, It's just, it was I felt like my values would be better taken forward by having, the factories here locally where I could see them every single day.
I love it. And also the fact that the garment district was made originally to do fashion. Obviously, it's not like that anymore, but I think it's amazing that you're kind of reinvigorating what New York City used to be.
Yeah, and I am definitely not the only one. There's other contemporary designers, not really the Indian-inspired Indo-Western type of clothing, but definitely other contemporary designers who value the quality and the workmanship of like the seamstresses and factories that are here locally. There's so much knowledge that they have because it's been around for so long. Yeah. Unfortunately, even before COVID, a lot of them were shutting down because they just didn't have enough business. They couldn't compete with overseas factories. But COVID, doubled down on that.
Sped it up.
Yeah. But there are still some that are like surviving and thriving. So that's why our showroom is actually in the garment district, because of the fact that like being, a couple blocks away, it's so easy to just go back and forth. If we were somewhere like trendy like Soho, we wouldn't have that luxury, you know? So, and there's, I think that the garment district is slowly becoming it's coming back in like a very different way, in a more like millennial Gen Z type of way. So
that's great. I think when you look at your website and you look at your fashion, it's very vibrant. There's so many different colors. How do you start with like an idea and like get it to an end product?
It's funny because I get this question all the time.
Of course.
And I don't even have a set answer. Traditionally, in like fashion design classes, what they do is they tell you to like make a mood board, right? Mm-hmm. Find your inspiration and then start sketching. And then, figure out what fabrics you want and go, take it step by step. For me, it's like I've always been all over the place, and my design like process is also all over the place. Sometimes I'll find a fabric I absolutely love and I design around that fabric. Sometimes I'll find a picture of like architecture that I really love and I'll sketch around that, picture. Sometimes I'll be traveling and see like garments that are traditionally worn by the people in those areas and be inspired by that.
So cool.
It's like kind of all over the place, and it's never really like a set like step-by-step process for me. It's just kind of like whenever I have the inspiration, I just like go at it. And that's kind of why we do like yearly collections, because I kind of like keep gathering that inspiration. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, that was my next question, is like, what happens if you aren't being inspired? Do you have certain type of rituals or customs to get yourself to that point of inspiration? Because I know for myself as an entrepreneur, it's hard to always be happy, friendly, you know what I mean? Like to get up every single day and like wanna invent or, come up with a new idea. So like, what do you do when you're not feeling inspiration?
It's really tough. And I think a lot of people who aren't really in creative fields don't understand. It's not something you can just turn on, turn off. It's not like Excel. You just like type in a few things and then the formula, like, you know,
tells you what to do.
Exactly. You can't just turn on and turn off the creativity. You really have to, like, for me at least, I have to like de-stress a little bit, like find something else to do that's completely unattached to my business. And sometimes it'll just happen like naturally. Sometimes I just kind of have to like force it, you know, looking at, you know, different like museums, looking at different architecture, looking at different blogs, watching like, you know, videos of certain cities, or like watching documentaries about something, you know, like it's weird, but you know, some even science documentaries sometimes, like I feel like I have ideas when I'm watching those. So like just kind of de-stressing, I think really helps. And luckily I have like a good team in place that kind of helps, and you know,
shout out to the team.
Yeah. I have that fodder there, you know, that kind of just helps that process a little bit when I'm a little stuck. But yeah, it's tough because sometimes you just, there's like a roadblock and you just can't get past it. And sometimes like one day you just wake up and it's gone.
Yep.
So you just kind of have to wait it out sometimes.
I love it. And I think that is an entrepreneur in my mind, right? Like, how do you get over that roadblock as fast as possible and as efficient as possible so you can get back to the creativity?
Yeah.
So I feel like you are the first entrepreneur we've had in the fashion industry. And everyone thinks of fashion as like this super glamorous lifestyle. So if someone wants to get into the fashion industry, like what kind of recommendations would you make for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, if you want to start your own business, I would say definitely make sure that the idea that you have is like completely thought out.
Yeah.
I feel like I was lucky enough that I like stumbled upon this idea that, you know, I wanted to do Indo-Western inspired garments. I wanted to like have fabrics that weren't traditionally Indian, but within, you know, doing them in traditional Indian silhouettes.
Yeah.
I was really into fabrics in general. So like I kind of had, you know, those ideas, and I was kind of in this like niche market that I feel like I felt strongly about. And I feel like if you don't feel like that strongly about what you're doing, it's like a recipe for failure,
right?
You know? And then the second thing is like have your idea, develop it fully, make sure that it's something that like is not being answered already. And if it is being answered, it's okay that you have that, you know, idea that you want to explore, but answer it in a different way. What is making your product unique, you know?
I love that.
And then the other thing is like getting whatever training you need to like make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. So like if you want to design clothing, take a fashion design course.
Yeah.
Don't just like start sketching and like think that, you know, you're going to understand everything, because there are so many nuances that go into like garment production that, you know, the layman doesn't understand. So, you know, you really have to make sure you know what you're doing. I think if you want to get into like the marketing side of fashion, then know about the marketing side. You know, if you want to get into design, know about the design side. Like no matter what aspect it is, like know it to a degree that you feel very confident that, you know, you can succeed. I think that's the most important thing for me.
Wow, that's great advice. I think one of the coolest parts of following you on social media, like you and I go way back. We've known each other for 20 years now. Probably like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And obviously we've lost touch along the last, getting married, having babies.
Because of the businesses, probably.
Right, because of the businesses. But following you on social media, to me, one of the coolest parts of your business is like, you're at this extravagant Indian event, whether it's babies are being born or a wedding, and like everyone's wearing Harleens, right? What does that feel like when because to me, one of the most amazing parts, and tell me if you agree or disagree, is a lot of times you get to see your creation come out to reality in these huge moments, right? So what does that feel like as an entrepreneur and as someone in the fashion industry to see this, like this reality come? Does it feel real?
In the beginning, it kind of, I was like so into it that I don't think I like really understood like the significance of like somebody like spending money on something that I made, you know,
for their milestones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like something, especially like, you know, their weddings, like you said, like, you know, their baby showers or their kid's first birthday or even their friends' weddings or their siblings' weddings, you know, it's like it's really significant. And kind of going back to actually what you said before of like how do you get, you know, continue to get inspired, sometimes just going in to help customers in appointments and just getting their feedback and like realizing like, okay, you know, they really loved X, Y, and Z that I was doing. Like maybe these are things that like I should keep doing more of, you know, like that kind of inspires me sometimes too. So being a part of like people's big days, especially more recently, we started doing more of our like couture work. So if customers come in and they really love our aesthetic, you know, they love, you know, multiple items in the collection, but maybe nothing is exactly right for them. They want something a little more intricate, heavy, more beading, embroidery, something a little more unique to them. We offer couture on like a select basis.
I got it.
Because I can only physically like handle so much in a year when we're doing that type of work, because we work one-on-one with those customers and we're literally going from like inspiration mood board all the way to like this is your garment and like you're wearing this on your wedding day. Wow. You know, it's like a really big deal, I think, for them and for us. So that's really fun. And those customers, I think it means even more because they trusted me to design something for them without even like seeing the product.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that is even more fulfilling than somebody coming into the showroom, picking something off the rack and saying like, I love this, I'm going to just purchase this today. Like, I love that. And it's great to know that like people resonate with the items that I've already produced, but it's even more fulfilling and rewarding to know that like people just trust me to like make something that they love because they love everything in the brand, you know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So recently you became a mom.
Yes.
And being a dad of a 2-year-old daughter, I understand how crazy it is, right? Now, you thought life was hard, but now you really see how important it is to balance work and life.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's resonating with you when I say that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went into it blindly. I was like, I'm not going to focus on how to deal with it after the baby's born because...
Like all great entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I was like, I will figure it out because I really want to have children, and B, I really want my business to succeed. And in order to do those two things, I just kind of have to go at it blindly. That was the way that I felt like I was going to, you know, figure it out. So since having him, you know, there have been so many curveballs thrown at me within, you know, my staffing, within my personal life, within like so many other aspects of the business. And, you know, we've just kind of like rolled with the punches. And I feel like, you know, it's definitely a learning process and I'm learning something every day. But I'm getting used to it a little bit.
Good.
I think I told you this already, but last night was definitely not fun.
It's always like that, though.
Jahan would wake up and he would literally be smiling and playing.
Right.
After like
I love those
a good
moments.
2.5 hour nap, but still,
Right.
it's like he will not go back to bed.
Right.
So we're up for an hour and a half in between
And
those
it's
naps.
always like that right before a podcast or a big meeting or a big phone call. I love that. I love how that works.
So those nights are tough. You know, luckily I'm able to, because I have a great team in place now in the office, and people who work remotely, I'm able to kind of do a lot of the stuff from home and just go in a few days. Because my husband is also running his own business, I have the luxury of him, you know, staying at home maybe like for half of the day and then me going into the office for the other half and us kind of like switching off if needed. But, you know, eventually I luckily have my in-laws around to help. So, yeah, it's definitely something to get used to. And I feel like it's going to hit me hard when I have to go back to the office consistently because I know that I'm going to miss, you know, certain things.
Of course.
But, you know, you kind of just have to like find a good balance, I think. And I'm hoping that I succeed in finding that balance.
I know you'll succeed.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned, not that
No,
this is about
please.
me, but what I've learned is just like quality over quantity. You know, I used to be such a workhorse. I would work as many hours as I was awake, And now it's like my daughter's getting older, and like we're going trick-or-treating for the first time ever. And instead of, getting to New York, usually I get from Connecticut to New York at like 10. I woke up even earlier this morning and started working even earlier so I can leave New York by 3, so I can be back by 5. And it's like, it's not easy, but so much more rewarding knowing that my passion's always been junk luggers, but at the same time now it's like being a great father, being a great husband. So just like juggling the quality aspects versus the quantity aspects that I feel like in the beginning being an entrepreneur requires you to do.
Yeah, and like, to that effect also, I feel like even those nights when I'm literally working until 11 p.m., those last few hours are like, sometimes I'm getting the amount of work done that I could do in 1 hour the next day.
Yeah.
It's like I'm working so slowly, so I'm like, okay, let me just stop, take a break even, play with him a little bit, and then go back to it if I really want to, I've had to like really prioritize things, and I think what you said is like, you are completely right. It's like quality over quantity, right? So hopefully, after a certain point, if I can at least get a couple hours in the morning and the evening with Jahan and like with my husband, I feel like, that'll mean a lot more than, me staying at home all day and like being stressed out.
And the idea of being perfect is like completely gone, right? Like you can't have a perfect company.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was always craving perfection, but now to me it's like, with less time, I'm focusing on what are the most high-valued activities that I should be doing as an owner, and then what you were talking about, having a great team that you can rely on and knowing that they can handle those aspects that you probably used to do yourself.
Yeah, I think like having a good team in place is so undervalued sometimes.
Yeah.
Having people that you trust and that you can really like, who are also just like good people, they understand like if you are in a crisis, you are, giving birth to your first child, like, okay, let me see what I can do to help her because she's helped me over the past, like, when I've had issues.
Yep.
I think like, that kind of, speaks volumes to like the type of people that you want in your company and like, working for you, because at the end of the day, it's like a family. You're with these people for most of the day, more than your actual like, blood family sometimes. So like really making sure that you've cultivated an environment that's like not only like fun to work in and like safe to work in, but also like, you really feel close to these people and like you want them to succeed just as much as they want you and the business to succeed. I think that that's so important.
I love it. I know family's super important to you, not just your own family now, but the family around you. And you talked a lot about how supportive your parents were in your dream. How much of that motivates you to continue what feels like the next generation of the Indian culture?
So like I said, I was fortunate because they were so supportive. I think a lot of Indian Americans grow up with their parents wanting them to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something else that like is a moneymaker.
I get it. Being Jewish, it's like accountant, lawyer, doctor.
Yeah, they want you to have like a prestigious job.
Yep.
They want you to make a lot of money because they struggled. A lot of them struggled
right,
to
that's
like
why they do it.
Exactly. And I totally get it, but not every Indian is made for that. Not every Jewish is made for that.
It's true. It's crazy.
And like, I think just having parents who like believed in me and my ideas was so, I feel so lucky to this day. And like, I hope that I can provide that to my kids too one day. It's funny because my husband and I joke around. We're like, hopefully they don't want to start their own businesses because we know how hard it is.
Right. It's true.
But at the end of the day, if they did want to start their own businesses, we would, absolutely support them as long as we could and, try and push them, get them the training that they need, push them in the right direction. And I think that it's definitely changing, with the Indian community, which is great. And, the other thing is like, there's some ideas that it's like this within any community in the U.S., regardless of, what race, ethnicity you are, there's certain new things that like kids are thinking of that, like, you don't even at my age, I'm like,
Right.
that seems so stupid, but
Right.
like in reality, it's like 5 years from now,
I was just
everybody's
about
going to
to
be
say,
doing it,
right.
right? So like you really have to trust your kids too.
Yeah.
That like, you know, if you're raising them right, like hopefully they're like
They're thinking of it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I hope that, you know, it's going to change. I've definitely seen a change in like, you know, the generation that like I grew up with. I feel like they're definitely more supportive of their kids. They're, you know, putting their kids in activities where it's not just like math and science. It's like art and all these other things like, oh, you know, you've shown an interest in like construction equipment. Like
Yeah.
my nephew is like obsessed with construction equipment. Like,
There we go. Your husband found his next successor.
so yeah, it's definitely I think like parents are doing a good job, especially the people in, you know, our generation now.
That's awesome. Now, I know we talked about it before, but I've seen some huge names wearing your outfits. Do you mind just talking about, like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And I know we were talking about before, I was like, I'm very impressed with your social media presence. And you're like, oh, we have so much more to go. That's an entrepreneur right there. It's like, they're never happy. They're always thinking they could do better. But, like, how did you get to where you are today in terms of having celebrities wearing it? And I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, social media has been amazing for our business. I mean, you know, you can easily reach people who are across the world, across the US, like, you know, very easily. You have the opportunity to share, you know, just photos of your brand, just videos of your brand, which are really like key selling points now. You know, it used to be like words that were more powerful. Now,
Right.
like imagery is everything, you know, and like we're a clothing company, so like the image is our brand.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely been really helpful. I think from the beginning, I was never like, I need to like increase our followers like exponentially really quickly, because to me, again, quality over quantity, right? Like you said before, I feel like it's like a recurring theme in everything, right? You know, you want the quality followers, you want the quality customers. You
Yep.
don't want the people who are just going to walk in and, you know, purchase once or twice. You want
Right.
the returning customers,
Of course,
right?
every single milestone, their whole family. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So like you make one person happy, they post on social media, they tag you, they tell all their friends and family about you, and then you get 5 new customers, 10 new
amazing.
customers from it, right? So that's kind of how we built our following more so than anything. Like we never really used a company or anything to like you know, build followers. We've used like certain like things here and there, like tactics, of course, to try and, you know, get people to become more aware of our social media presence. But the same in so that kind of goes, you know, for customers, but it's the same thing when celebrities and other people, because they're also on social media, right?
And they're actually human beings,
Exactly.
right? Like
So
they have that need also.
yeah, so a lot of our like press has come from the fact that, you know, so and so other celebrity tagged us, they talked about us, they wore our brand, and then, you know, and a different celebrity saw that, and then they got in touch with us about, you know, potentially wearing our brand for so and so event, or a stylist saw us and wants to style so and so for, you know, the Grammys or so and so's red carpet. You know, like it's definitely a reason why we've had like a good amount of press.
It's amazing.
I think that, like I said, like we still have like a long way to go, I think. One thing I always struggle with, this is kind of like a sidestep, but I always struggle with, like, you know, there's other brands out there too who are not doing the exact same thing as us, but like, you know, are competitors nonetheless.
Of course.
And like you see like their wins, and then you're like, you start comparing, right?
Right.
So I really have to like take a step back sometimes and tell myself, like, you know, there's struggles that they're not actually putting on Instagram,
Of course.
just like we don't, you
Of
know.
course.
You want everybody to see the best of the best. I mean, sometimes when things are really bad, we also post about that too, just so that people are aware, like, we are human too.
That's
We're
great.
not just like a name on paper and on clothing that, like, you know, it doesn't have anybody behind it. But yeah, I think that there's a long way to go still on social media, Instagram specifically, TikTok, all of those. But luckily, we've been fortunate enough to have like really fun people reach out. Recently, Kal Penn. Kal Penn actually wore something of ours last year, and he reached out, came to the showroom, and he was such a nice person. So we've continued to work with him. He wore a few things this year for Diwali, and actually one of the photos got featured in Vogue, which was really exciting for us.
Yeah.
That is like, you know...
It's like the biggest thing possible.
Yeah, for like a fashion company, I think like being featured in Vogue is like a huge deal, you know? It wasn't like an article dedicated to us or anything, but like the feature itself is just something that's so huge. Like, you kind of work towards it because it's like that recognition is something that it means a lot, especially because we don't have a PR company that's like pushing these things for us, PR companies cost a lot of money.
Yes, they do.
And we've thought like, focusing on our customer service, like I said, making one customer happy who's going to become a returning customer, and then them also referring their friends and family. That is like sometimes more valuable than, us being featured in Vogue. Like, how many Indians do you know that are going to read that article and then like also say like, okay, like, let me look into this brand? There's going to be a lot for sure. But at the same time, like, you trust your friends more than an article almost always, right? You trust your family more. When you see somebody wearing the garments at so-and-so's wedding, then you see it and you're like, oh, wow, this looks really good. Where is it from? That type of exposure, I think, is more valuable for me, at least in my business.
And I think that's a really good strategy. You don't see businesses with that strategy. Like, when you and I were talking before shooting the podcast, like, I loved hearing that you're so focused on customer service and word of mouth, because that's how you build a strong foundation. And all of a sudden, like, you get picked up in Vogue and your business goes like that, but like, you still have the foundation set up for success. Yeah.
That foundation is so important too. And like, it's kind of a catch-22 sometimes, right? Because like, okay, you don't have, the financial means really to like make customers happy all the time, right? Like, sometimes people will buy the wrong size, or sometimes people will spend a couple $1,000 on their wedding dress. They'll lose 10 pounds, come in and be like, this doesn't fit me anymore. What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, well, we took your measurements, 3 months ago. And like, the fact that you've changed we can't prevent that. We try and do everything we can to check in with people and say like, have your measurements changed? Mm-hmm. Do you want us to go a little smaller, a little bigger when it's possible? But like, at the end of the day, sometimes like, we can't do anything about it. And it's like, those situations are tough, because it's like, do you eat the cost and just make somebody happy, or do you kind of like stand your ground and say like, no, I'm sorry? And like, when you have a little bit more financial wiggle room because you're not spending money on like a huge PR company, or you're not spending money on like running ads all the time, then, you can make those customers happy once or twice and say, I'll make an exception for you this time, but, in the future, if this happens again, like, I can't do this for you. Or, like, just working with customers as humans,
The human aspect.
Yeah.
Where's the future going with Harleen Kaur? Like, what would be your dream? Like, where do you go from here?
I think I always kind of, I never really look too far in advance, because I feel I feel like I like to take the baby steps. I'm really happy with where we are right now. We have a showroom that I really love. It's a great space. It can always be bigger. Yep. Right. So that's number
New York
one.
City right there in a nutshell.
I think it'd be great to have a space one day where we can have like kind of our own little factory, not outsourcing as much.
Love it.
Have our own factory with our own workers, having a few floors, or like, a really big space where we can have a space dedicated to some seamstresses, some people cutting and cutting the garments, some people, working in the other departments of the business, other people working in the showroom. Like, having a much larger space, I think, would be really nice.
Check out Industry City.
Yeah.
We just went there for another podcast in Brooklyn.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, okay, the issue with Brooklyn, though, is so if we do have our own...
How are you going to get your clients out to Brooklyn?
Well, that is definitely a big thing. But number two is if we are still using a lot of the resources in the garment district, it becomes hard. Like, there's even some contemporary brands will have, like, offices out in Brooklyn, but, like, they have to have people going back and forth to the garment district multiple times a day. And that just gets kind of, like, taxing, you know? But the customer aspect, so a really important thing for us is that we're right next to Port Authority. So our location is so convenient for people coming from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Very convenient for people coming from Connecticut.
Yeah.
Very convenient for people coming from Long Island. So, you know, no matter where you kind of are in the tri-state area, it's pretty convenient for you to get to that location. And I think that's really important for us because the Indian population is huge in the tri-state area.
Yeah.
But it's like spread out among mostly New York and New Jersey. So having that like central location where people can easily get to us is, I think, really important. So realistically, I'd probably say we want to stay in the garment district, just expand.
Great.
Being able to, you know, reach more customers across the U.S., I think, is something that's important to us. So, you know, perhaps doing some more pop-up shows like around the country. Not before we opened our own store, we were doing pop-ups in the city, and I think like, you know, we realized, okay, this is actually, you know, something we want to do long term. So being able to do those pop-ups in places like California, in places like Toronto, Texas, Chicago, those places where there's like a huge population of Indians, I think is something that I want to work towards.
I love it.
And definitely reaching more customers that aren't Indian.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, so I would say actually a good like 40% of our customer base is not even Indian.
So are they going to an Indian wedding?
Yes. A lot of them are going to an Indian wedding and they appreciate our clothing because they can wear it again after.
Yeah.
They're not just purchasing a $400, $500 outfit that they're literally only going to wear once. They're purchasing something where they can, you know, pick apart the outfit. They can wear the crop top with something else. They can even wear the full like floral outfit to a non-Indian wedding. You know, I think they really appreciate the versatility aspect of our brand. And like, you know, promoting that, I think, is something that we kind of have to tackle a little bit better. And I want to try and reach more customers who aren't Indian.
Yeah.
Even for non-Indian events. Like, we do have a few customers who come in who aren't Indian, who are not even going to an Indian event. They just
love your style.
Yeah, they like the florals. They like it's unique, you know. It's something that's a little different. It's not really, even other contemporary designers aren't really, like, non-Indian ones aren't really doing things, I think, in the way exactly that we are. So, and right now, I guess this is kind of, you know, lucky for us, but the whole crop top and skirt thing is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's been for like the last couple years now, so it's kind of been, you know, a selling point for us because it's kind of in fashion. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any questions for me?
How do you do it? How do you juggle everything? Because since I've met you, you've expanded the business like tenfold. It's been crazy to watch. I mean, granted, I've been watching from a distance, but it's amazing that, you know, the brand that you've built.
How do I do it? I'm very organized.
Yeah.
And I'm like super diligent with my time. So like everything is in Google Calendar.
Yeah.
Everything. Like if I need to get something done, I'll put it in there. You know, I always think if I need an hour to do something, can I do it in 45 minutes? And I'm just so strict on scheduling that I've been very successful at it. You know, I can get a lot done in a day.
Do you feel like it like stresses you out a little bit to look at your calendar sometimes because there's so much on it?
Yeah.
Because I tried to organize my day in the way that you just explained, and like I would look at my calendar and I'm just like, this is too stressful, and like there's things that pop up that are urgent that I have to take care of, and then like my whole day is thrown off, and then I have to move things around, and then at that point I'm like, I'm wasting time moving things around on the calendar. Like, how do you tackle that?
I build in that time. Like I know that I'm gonna have things thrown at me, especially the days that I'm in New York.
Yeah.
Like I literally build in time to go around and talk to each of my coworkers.
Yeah.
Because like what you were talking about, I figured out a long time ago that I'm not going to be able to get everything done unless I have such a strong team around me, that I want to make sure they feel appreciated and that I know what's going on in their lives.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so important.
It's so important. And like, you know, it happened to me earlier this year. And like, if I didn't have such a strong team around me, what would I have done? You know, I was in the hospital for 10 days. I would have never been able to stay successful if everyone around me didn't care as much as I do.
Yeah.
And I always, this part, I feel like no one really talks about, but I start with the hardest task first.
Yeah. Because the morning is the time when you're most alert and like awake and capable of thinking the way that you need to, right?
Yeah. And like everyone knows, I call it the flow state.
Yeah.
Where you like feel very creative or you feel like, you know, like that's your time to shine. So like being aware of that and hyper focus, like for me, like you said, the morning is the most important. So like if I know 6 to 7:30 a.m. is like my time, and my daughter won't be awake yet, and my wife is still sleeping, and I could just sit in front of my computer and focus, to me, that's like the most important time of my day.
Yeah.
So like I'll start with that task that would normally I would hold off the entire day to do. But if you hold off the entire day, like you get stressed out about it all day, like shit, I still have to do that. And now things come up along the day where, you know, you waste all your energy on it. So now it's like 11 o'clock at night and you're like, fuck, I'm never going to be able to function about this. So I don't think it's important what time of the day it happens. I think it's just more important for an entrepreneur to be aware of what time of the day they have that flow state. And really focus on getting that task that would normally stress you out if you were procrastinating, to get it done during that time.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I feel like it's something that I struggle with the most is like staying organized with my tasks, because it's like sometimes I don't know what the highest value task is, you know? It's like I have 10 high value tasks. Which one do I tackle first, you know? That is like a constant struggle for me, at least. So it's something that I have to definitely work on.
Yeah, and also the fact that you're aware that it's a struggle and a weakness, like how can you take that weakness and make it a strength? So for me, like one of my weaknesses as an entrepreneur is like I'm very emotional.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't surprise you at all because you know me well enough, but like, you know, there's so many times where I'll like start crying, you know what I mean? Like something really sets me off. I'll hear about one of my coworkers that's having a really tough time at home, and it's like, it makes me very emotional. So I started to think to myself, like most entrepreneurs think that as a weakness. How can I play on my emotions to make it one of my strengths?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I guess that's homework for me.
Yeah, and like, don't try to be perfect, right? Like
it's hard though, because when you're running a business, like you want everything
running
to be
a business
perfect all the
and
time.
you're sleeping in segments.
Yeah.
You're like a new mom and like you're sleeping like 2 to 4 hours at a time. Like that's crazy. Yeah, shout out to my wife who is amazing at that and allows me to be focused. If you could have a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say and why?
Definitely promoting my brand. And I think, you know, born and raised, like the brand was born and raised in New York, in the city. So like Times Square.
Love it.
You know?
That's so great.
Go big or go home.
If people want to reach out to you on social media, like what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, so website is www.harleenkaur.us. And social media is harleenkaur.us.
We'll
for
put
most
up the
of our
socials.
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Am I missing something? Facebook?
Probably.
Although our Facebook got hacked into last week, which was not fun. So we're still working on getting the Facebook back up. But we got the Instagram.
Good.
Luckily back.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think those are the socials.
That's great.
And
And
they can visit us.
Yeah, you can visit in the Garment District.
Garment District, 40th and 8th. You can literally find our address on Google or on our website.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Our first office was on 37th and 8th.
Oh, wow.
555 8th Avenue.
Oh, I know that building.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a couple vendors in that building.
Yep.
Textile. You were in the garment district.
I was in the garment district, and I loved it because of the convenience.
Yeah.
Like, you're on every major
subway
station. You get the crazies coming from Times Square, so there's never a boring day.
Like, people walking with no sense of urgency when you have to get somewhere at some time, and there's people just strolling because they're tourists.
Right. Before we end, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of, like, my favorite parts of Harleen is, like, I haven't talked to you in 10 years, and I called you, and you were just leaving the hospital.
No, I had just came back from the hospital. You just
came back from the hospital.
It was like 2 days, like, yeah.
And I remember you picked up, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so embarrassed that I didn't even know you had your son. And, like, that's who you are in a nutshell. Like, you just picked up, you agreed to come on the podcast. You've only had your son 10 weeks ago. And I'm so appreciative of our friendship and all of the insight that you gave our viewers for being in the fashion industry. And thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to do it. It's always so nice to be able to talk, obviously, to a friend, but also just about the brand. And it kind of helps me develop, like, certain new ideas sometimes, and, like, really, like, look back and reflect on things, which I think is important. And sometimes, like, I don't give enough time to do that. So
and give yourself enough credit for how amazing you're doing.
You.
That wraps up episode 26 of the Lug Life podcast. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to Harleen on social media, on Instagram. Like, comment, subscribe. Watch us on YouTube, not just Spotify. And we love you so much. Thank you so much. You crushed it.
Thanks.
It's so and I love how you're like, what are we going to even talk about? And I'm like, don't worry.